Good day, Com 600. This is Ben Frazier. Just thought I wanted to spend a couple minutes with you. It's a beautiful rainy morning here in Virginia Beach, and we just finished the on-campus class, and I thought I'd just take a moment to talk to you a little bit about where we are in the class. We're into our fifth week now, as you know, so we're about a quarter or a third of the way through the class. And I just wanted to remind you that we have you have a paper due on Friday. It's our first of the three book reviews. This is on postmodernism. Who's afraid of postmodernism? And that it is due Friday, September 23rd. Unlike the rest of your assignments on discussion board is due on Sunday night as usual, but that one is due Friday. I will get, all of us will work together who are helping with this class to make sure that you have some kind of feedback at least a week before you have to do your second book review, so one can build on the other. All right, so where are we in this class? Let me just go through some of what we've been doing and just see if I can begin to help you make sense of what this class is about. The first 2 weeks, as you know, we looked at worldview, we looked at Lewis and Freud representing the scientific worldview, which has had a tremendous influence, and really modernity is in many ways represented in that. And then we have another view of the world through the Christian worldview as represented by Lewis. And one of the things I said is that within that, there's rooms for variety and differences of opinion, not completely different, but some difference of opinion and understanding of the scientific worldview and the Christian worldview. All right, then we move from that to the next week, and we look at the third week, that is Quentin Schultz. And Quentin Schultz is really, in my opinion, a really good book to give us a view of how Christian communication takes place and looking at some of the theories that are involved in that. Particularly, he emphasizes the role of culture and that we have a cultural obligation to help renew and reform and remodel culture because we are image bearers of Jesus Christ. We want to bear that image to the stories and the symbols that we use, and that hopefully our culture will reflect that. As our culture does that, it might help others come to know and understand Christ. So we have a cultural mandate and the evangelistic mandate, the one found in Genesis, the other found in Matthew. Okay, so that's what Quentin Schultz is talking about. And there's other great things in there, as some of you have discussed in the discussion board. And then the last week, we talked about the Unchristian, the book by Kinnaman. And we just read the articles, we didn't read the whole book. And really what I'm trying to show us there is that we looked at worldview, we looked at culture, and now we need to look at the individual, particularly the audience. Audience becomes very important in any communication, interaction, or transaction that you might be involved in. We assume we know the audience far too often. And this particularly is true within the Christian community. We think the audience is ready and willing to accept our message. They think they have this view that we are what we are. And what I'm really trying to get across here is that we have an image, as Kinnaman does, we have an image problem. People see us in a very particular way that is in many ways very unbiblical. And that we have to take into account. And I don't think the church has done that enough. I don't think we've honestly looked at how other people, the audiences that we have within the United States and outside the United States, how they are reflecting upon both the messenger, the Christian, and the message. And so we need to take that into account when we help construct and build our messages about faith. And so first, get to know your audience and love them, be with them, understand you're a part of them. They come out of the same culture you do, and begin to understand in honest ways how people view Christians. And of course, in the Unchristian, they found that they saw us as homophobic, they saw us as judgmental, they saw us as hypocritical, and other such things like that. So those are the kinds of things that we need to be aware of, because it makes a big difference how people think about us or how people think about our message, how we then craft the message that we have. That doesn't mean we change the message. That doesn't mean we make it different, but it does mean that we need to be careful on how we present it and take their feelings and their thoughts into mind. Reminds me of Buber's book where he talks about I, thou, I, it. How a lot of times our communication in our culture, in the scientific culture, is that we're communicating as if it's only an information problem, that all we have to do is craft a better argument or provide more information and people will adopt our ideas and understandings. And as if we're treating the person we're trying to, or the audience that we're trying to, as a solid objective thing. The fact is that we are dealing with people who have their own beliefs, their own ideas, their own emotions, and we need to think about that when we communicate, how they perceive us and how they perceive the message that we have, so then we can artfully and carefully craft a message that can be heard. And you can see this in the New Testament and the Old Testament, how often the stories of the Old Testament, and particularly the parables of Jesus, were crafted as parables, as stories, that were not necessarily immediately understood, that it took, as Christ would say, that eyes to see and ears to hear for those stories to be understood. And so in the same kind of way, we need to take people and audiences into account when we craft our message. Very important for the church to do that. I think a lot of times we think that all it is a matter of telling the truth, and the truth is as we perceive it. Telling the truth is much more difficult than we sometimes are led to believe. And so we have to begin to live the truth. We have to begin to confront the illusions of our culture and upend them. There's a term that's sometimes used in film, and that's called defamiliarization. And what defamiliarization is taking something that is common and most people understand it in a certain way, and defamiliarizing that meaning in order to introduce a new meaning within that object or that thing. And that is sort of what we sometimes need to do when Christianity is totally so foreignly misunderstood. We need to defamiliarize the old meanings and reintroduce the truer meanings of our Christian faith. Then that leads us then, of course, to what we're talking about now, what our culture is like, where we talk about modernity and postmodernity, and that's where we are this week. Now, I can't go into that because I know you're all writing your papers right now, so I will have to save that for a lecture next week. But I know it's a difficult book, and just let me say that. I know it's hard. Don't worry about the last chapter, chapter 5. Really deal with chapter 1 through 4. If you do chapter 5 and you've already done it, well, that's great. That's good. It's all tough, but that's particularly a tough one. Postmodernism is very difficult to understand, and I'd be the first to admit that. And if anything, it is a strong critique on modernity that many times, and for most Christians, we share that same critique of modernity, or we should, in my opinion. There are limits to what modernity has to say to us and how it says it to us. And now, there are problems with postmodernity. One of the problems is the definitions, and you see Lyotard, Foucault, and Derrida are three very difficult Frenchmen to understand, and Jamie Smith does a great job in trying to explain to them. Please understand, he doesn't believe that everything these men have to say is right and good. He's just trying to say that, hey, wait, instead of just totally writing them off, we need to understand they're saying some very important and some useful things. And let's understand that and give them credit where credit is due. And then we do have some problems with modernity too. Any rate, so that's where we are. I'm looking forward to reading your papers, as well as Dr. Ward and the rest of the TAs in this class. We'll talk to you next week, and God bless you as you finish these papers. Be not weary in well doing, for in due season you shall reap if you faint not. God bless. Bye.